You're listening to the Membership Geeks podcast, bringing you proven practical tips and advice from the leading experts on growing a successful membership business.
What's up, membershipper? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Membership Geeks podcast. I'm your host, Mike Morrison, chief geek around these parts and the founder of Membership Geeks and Membership Academy. And this is the #1 show for the ideas, insights, tips, inspiration to help grow sustainable membership businesses that don't just launch, they last for the long haul. Today, we've got a very special episode. I'm joined by my good friend Colin Gray, who is the foremost expert on podcasting. He's the founder of the Podcast Host and of Alitu, which is an incredible podcast recording, editing, hosting, all-in-one suite, which is just an amazing tool for podcasters. And as you've no doubt guessed from the fact you are listening to the podcast, I'm a big fan of podcasting. Our podcast has been such a critical part of our marketing strategy for Membership Geeks and for the Academy since the beginning. You know, we launched this podcast back in July 2015. We're now over 450 episodes strong. A decade in the podcasting world, and we wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't so effective for not just increasing our reach and our visibility, but demonstrating our expertise on a wider audience and for driving member sales. So I'm a huge fan of podcasting, and a lot of successful memberships have podcasting as part of their mix. And to this day, our podcast remains the highest single channel of new member signups that we get when we ask people, where did you find out about us? What led you to joining the Academy? An overwhelming majority of people will say that they first found us through the podcast. So I'm very bullish. I'm all in on podcasts, but the podcasting world has changed significantly. There are so many shifts that have gone on, both in terms of podcasts becoming more mainstream and therefore more saturated by just more people out there podcasting. A greater percentage of those podcasts coming from big name celebrities, big money podcast networks. And so the independent podcaster kind of feels like they're getting squeezed out a little bit. And at the same time, we've got the rise of AI. All these different things that are kind of coalescing to make podcasting just a different place to what it was 5 years or 10 years ago. So I wanted to bring my friend Colin onto the show, not just because he is one of the most trusted voices in the podcasting space. He's been doing this a heck of a long time, but also because I just wanted to pick his brains as a podcaster to see where is the podcasting industry now? Where are the opportunities? What should we be changing? How can we be successful in podcasting? And for those who don't already have a podcast that they're trying to grow, is it too late to start a new podcast? Has the ship sailed? Is the opportunity gone? So this is a really useful, really insightful conversation with Colin. He dropped so much advice. We had a lot of discussion around the state of podcasting, but also talked about what is working right now for increasing reach, for increasing visibility, and improving the effectiveness of a podcast as part of your marketing mix to drive new member sales. So if you are in podcasting, if you're using podcasting for your membership, or if you're considering adding it into the mix, this is an essential interview. So without further ado, I'm going to dive right in to my discussion with Colin Gray. Today, I'm joined by someone who's been in the podcasting space longer than most people have even known what a podcast was. Colin Gray is the founder of the podcasthost.com and creator of Alitu, which is an incredible tool for creating your podcast and taking care of all the recording, cleanup, editing, and even hosting your show as well. And he is my go-to person for all the tools, training, and resources that have helped countless podcasters to launch and grow their shows over the past decade. Given how much the podcasting landscape and marketing in general has shifted over the last few years, Colin is the person I knew I had to have come on the show to talk about where podcasting is right now, how to stand out, and how membership owners can get more from all the effort they put into their show. So Colin, fantastic to have you. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Hey, Mike, always good to chat. Thanks for bringing me on.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, you know, I've been such a big fan of podcasting as a marketing medium, a content medium for just any business, but membership owners in particular. I've always believed it's really powerful, important. But it does feel like it's been changing as an industry, kind of. I don't want to, from the outside looking in, a little slowly over the last decade. And then it seems those changes have really ramped up with the increase in AI, with more big budget shows and networks, more and more competition. So where do you think podcasting is right now as a medium, as an industry? What's changed? What's working? Are we in the same place we were even just 3 or 4 years ago?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I think that things have never been more uncertain. It's just actually crazy how much has changed over the last little while. I mean, I remember back in the day, I think around when I met you, like 2015, 2016, 17-ish, that it felt like it was moving fast then because podcasting started 7 or 8 years before that. And it felt like, Apple added it to their app, to their phone by default, and Serial came out and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, yeah, everything's moving fast. And then suddenly 2024, 2025, and then you're like, yeah, that was nothing.
Yeah, that wasn't fast at all, was it? That
was. Yeah, I think that, there's a few things in there, isn't there? I think there's one of the most interesting trends that I've seen over the last year, actually, which actually probably has the biggest effect on creators like you and I and your membership members as well, is that kind of hollowing out of the middle at the moment. I think there's a real kind of barbell thing going on right now where, back in 15, 16, 17, you could start a relatively general purpose podcast, have a good chat with a few friends, and it could work quite nicely, actually. But that whole area just seems to have disappeared altogether because it's totally shifted to either end. The only way you tend to be able to make that kind of show work now is if you've got a big celebrity name, essentially. So it feels like all of the general purpose, general conversation, broad appeal shows, they're now all just run by celebrities because they've all jumped into it because it's proven that it can make them money. It's become popular. So that stuff has all gone up there to one end of the barbell. And the other end that's left for people like us is the hyper niche. It's the hyper purposeful. It's the hyper niche. It's finding your exact segment, being much more even. We've always talked about niche. We've always talked about getting specific with your targeting and stuff. But nowadays, it's just even more important, I think. So I don't know. It probably doesn't just apply to podcasting. Is that just everywhere, do you think?
I think there's a bit of everything, but I don't know if it's just because your input, you are the podcasting person, and podcasting's always been such a big part of our marketing. I don't know if we're just noticing it more within this medium, but maybe it's almost the blending of the medium, because certainly, again, if we go back 10 years, for me, podcasting was audio. Like that's still a hill I want to die on. It's not a podcast unless it is audio, even though let's set aside the fact that there is no, it's called podcast because of like iPods and stuff. We don't have those anymore, really, do we? So I don't know whether maybe the blending into video, coupled with the rise of not just big name celebrities, but also their production quality and production levels that were already, I feel, a hurdle for podcasters. Like, how many podcasts will you've heard over the years that just sound like they're being recorded on a tin can? But I wonder if the barrier to entry went up so that you either had to have a really clear, specific plan with a niche, or you had to have the resources of a bigger celebrity to create a show that was just a little more loose. I don't know. It's a strange one. And I wonder whether the big celebrity shows have been discouraging or maybe have hoovered up so much of the market that it's just not left space for the middle.
I think the really cool thing is actually that there's a part of that, but actually that's not quite. So that what they've done is expand it. It's great actually because the video element has expanded podcasting. It's expanded listenership. Podcasting is still growing. It has been every single year. It's never been that kind of hockey stick growth you see in some mediums, but it still is growing. And a lot of that now is due to video. Like so much more watching of podcasting is happening on YouTube, but it hasn't shrunk the audio listening. That's the cool thing. Like, so people are still listening to audio podcasts just as much. It's just that And this actually came out in our data. We did a survey just 2 or 3 months ago. It's the Independent Podcaster Survey. And we got a bunch of really cool data in there. And one of it was around the fact that it looks like podcasting is almost splitting altogether. There's now just two different kinds of podcasting. There's the highly produced video podcasts, and then there's the audio podcasts that can be any range and much more specific and niche and maybe less celebrity driven. But it's just around choosing, isn't it? It's around what resource you have, because running a video podcast is just, if you want to make it highly produced, it's so time intensive. It's like, it's not just twice as hard to edit a video podcast. It's like 10 times as time consuming. It's ridiculous. So there's this weird thing where you either have loads of resources and a team, and then you can create a highly produced video podcast, or you don't have any resources and you just do audio. Or you do really, really raw video. It was a weird thing in that we saw that actually people who don't have a team, they actually spent more time editing their audio than video, because as soon as you start editing video, it takes, like, you're committing to a lot of time. Whereas as an individual, you can create a really well soundscaped, really nicely produced documentary style audio just as an individual person. But it's near impossible to do that with video. So there's this weird thing where, like I say, it's splitting into audio and video in separate ways, but equally it's, highly produced video versus individual raw video. And then there's this like highly produced audio in the middle, which is kind of strange.
Do you feel with video-based podcasts, immediately when I'm thinking of those kind of shows, they are usually multi-person. Yeah. So it's either one-on-one interviews like Diary of a CEO, or like the big guy. What's his name? MMA referee.
Joe Rogan.
Yeah, Joe Rogan. Yeah. Like, I was going for Seth Godin and Seth Rogen. Like
sounds right.
Yeah, like. I think Seth Godin has a podcast, I believe, but
he does.
No. So I always think of multi-person podcasts when it's video based, and it's the people sitting around the tables or people in the comfy sofas and having those conversations. And I don't know whether again this is just a barrier or whether it's just kind of been stuck in my ways, but I can't see it being as appealing as a consumer for it to just be a one-person video podcast. I don't know if that's thinking about the length. So because I've predominantly done solo episodes over the years, and tend to shoot for like 15 to 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes of watching an interview is nothing. I'm probably going to want more than that. 15 to 20 minutes of watching friends having a conversation and fooling around. Like, is it the Bad Friends or is it Good Friends podcast, the comedy podcast from the States? I could watch that for hours. But 15 to 20 minutes of just a talking head, that starts to feel a bit long. Do you think, are you seeing that being part of the split in terms of the actual show format, or is it purely just the medium itself?
There's a bit of the format, yeah, for sure. Like, you're absolutely right. That kind of two people sitting in a chair, each facing each other. You do the angles. Like, there's some great software out there, like can do all that flipping and stuff. If you download your tracks from wherever you're recording, whether it's like with us with Alitu or otherwise, there's ways to do that. So it's like you can do a nicely highly produced video podcast like that. But the ironic thing is, like, the stats show that most people don't watch it. Like, it's great to have it there, and it looks impressive, and there is definitely some marketing juice there, having it looking so beautiful and well produced. But people generally just have a look at it and they go, "Oh, that looks cool," and then they shove it in their pocket and then start walking. So, or they put it on they have it in the computer in the background, like they minimize the YouTube tab and it's playing in the background. So it's a funny one. Like, yeah, we do it, and I mean, it comes to, like, we'll come to marketing and stuff, I'm sure, but clips, like short form clips, definitely are a big part of podcast marketing these days. We can't avoid it. And that takes having some video, at least. The nicer the video is, the better those clips can be. But capturing it in the first place, it's useful, but I don't know. I think the big thing that I've been talking about recently is making sure that folk know that audio podcasts still work really, really well, especially for small niche things. Like growing a membership is almost certainly in that category. And so don't feel the pressure to do video, because it can ruin it. It can actually kill a podcast because you just end up being overwhelmed, too many tasks, too much time, too much resource, all of this stuff. So yeah, just being able to stick to audio, knowing that you can stick to audio, I think there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that the data is backing up that audio hasn't been cannibalized by the increase in video-based podcasts, which I do associate more with the rise of the celebrity podcasts on the big networks. They do seem to be skewing a little more towards video because, you know, a lot of them already, it's TV presenters or it's podcasts of TV shows, so they're already equipped for that. Do you feel then that audio is perhaps the better inroad into podcasting for the independent creator? Is there still room for the new independent creator? And how does that balance out with, I suppose, the increased competition, but the increased mainstream opportunities and everything that comes from that?
Yeah, I think there absolutely definitely is still room for any new independent creators. And I think, anyone we work with, anyone we talk to, it's like, start with audio, start just with audio. If you really want to record video, by all means do, but just use it for clips. And even then it's still like adding such a job, like a time commitment as well. So try to forget about that for the first 10. But it's like, finding that space though. There's so many things go into that. Like, how do you make a show stand out? How do you grow a show these days? Where do you find your niche? And so much of it is around that purpose, isn't it? Like most of the listeners here, Mike, will be either membership owners, aren't they? So like they've all got a product to sell. Their purpose is to gather members. And so much of that is around a few things. It's around consistency for a start, because people don't buy off one show. They buy after they've had you in their ears for 10, 20, 30 hours or something like that.
And that absolutely bears true. You know, our podcast is still the main place new people joining our membership find us. But so often it's comments like, I've been listening to the podcast for years, or I discovered the podcast and binge listened and then joined. It's never, in the same way people don't join off one blog article or off one video, it is consistently showing up and having that body of work.
Yeah, for sure. And that is absolutely it, isn't it? It's like, and then actually giving you a bit of yourself as well. So it's like, you know, the old way, you talk about how podcasting has changed, like in 2015, even up to 2020, it was like the way then to sell was here's how to do a thing. Here, 5 tips to do X, you know, this is how to do that thing. But that is just useless nowadays. Like you can go on ChatGPT or whatever and get that in 2 seconds. The new way is like, here's a story about how I failed at X, and here's how it felt, and here's how you can then avoid it because of that. It's like people actually seeking out the perspective, the insight. It's not the info, it's the insight, the perspective that actually matters. And that's the human part. That's like how we overcome the deluge of AI slop and all that kind of stuff as well. It's they're just looking more and more for humanity, for experience, for story, and all those things that come into it. So yeah, for membership owners, as an example, like if you can have a show that you get consistent, you do week in, week out for 30 weeks, and then you build in your perspective, a little bit of that every single episode, a few stories about how you did this and that, a few stories about how you failed and then succeeded, and the experience of that is what builds that loyalty, that trust, that, you know, that just fandom, actually, that fanatical fandom that people are then like, at some point they say, I want to do this thing, and this person has done it, and I like their perspective on it, and therefore I'm going to pay them the money to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of preempting what I was wanting to go on to about how the rise of AI-generated content, written and audio and video now, and it's just exponentially improving in its quote-unquote realism and becoming harder to detect what is human and what's not.
Yeah.
Is it that perspective, the stories, the stuff that's harder to replicate? Is that the key to standing out? Or is there other things we should be seeding into our approach?
I think it is. And I think there's something, I think my feeling is that over the next 5 years, the membership, the content that works, the niche content that works, is going to be the niche content, the people that find a really interesting angle on their niche. So you take like your self-teaching memberships, you find like really how you got into it, your story of getting into it, what your perspective is on building memberships, and being able to get that out and really building that into a whole story, an ethos, a thing that is just like entirely human. It's not something that an AI can come up with. So you've got that as the foundation of it, but then actually in person, I think actually becomes really important to growing any kind of content in future, particularly a podcast. I think there's two sides to this as well. Like I've always talked about in-person events as being a really great podcast growth mechanism, because podcasts are this type of content that works really well at a small scale. So you can make a living out of 100 listeners, 200 listeners, because you can build such trust and such credibility that you can sell a really high ticket consulting package, membership, whatever that might be. You can convert 200 listeners, into 150 buyers. You can actually, it's a huge conversion rate compared to a blog. You might convert like 0.1, or on YouTube, maybe you convert like 1% of your listeners max. But with podcasting, you can get good sales out of a few hundred listeners, even 100 listeners. So doing things that don't necessarily scale in other mediums to grow it actually is a really great thing in podcasting. And that means going to network. You're a pro at this as well from the olden days, Mike? Like going to old networking events, stuff like that.
Yes, not the kind I used to go to, please. No.
Yes. But that kind of stuff is just gold for growing a podcast audience, because you meet 1, 2, 3, 5 people, let's say. They become like enamored with your view because you've talked to them in person, they've got to know you. And because they've got to know you, they go and listen to the show, and they're so much more likely to become fans that then pass it on to their friends and pass it around their communities. And those elements just scale so much more in a podcast than they do in any other medium, because people spend so much time with you. So I think that's the big change I see, is it's that in-person side, like getting out there and going to events and getting over those nerves and speaking on a stage, maybe even a small stage, or doing actual live recordings, in your local pub in front of 10 people, 15 people, 20 people. That kind of stuff, I think, is going to be so much more powerful to combat that AI slop type approach, because they see a person, a real person right there.
Yeah. And I think that's probably going to be a difficult mindset shift for a lot of people, because for so long, the concern has been about discoverability. How do we reach as many people as we can? Even with niche shows, even very, very niche topics can still have a substantial size market. And the idea of actually now starting to go a little bit deeper, a little bit more intimate with our audiences, is almost counter to what I think most people, not just in podcasting but in marketing in general, have been trying to do. But it's right, if you've got 200 listeners and you can actually convert 50% of them versus having 2,000 and converting 5% of them, which is probably more realistic for how most people's marketing looks. You'll have people with tens of thousands of people on their email list who have come through their podcast, but they have a conversion rate of maybe 2 to 3%. So actually, if you're channeling effort into going deeper with a smaller number of people, then that like AI isn't trying to narrow its reach and go deep with people. Yeah. So if you're trying to compete with AI-fueled content for like breadth of reach, you're going to lose.
You're absolutely, yes. And the cool thing as well is that I don't think it limits you long term either. Like every great podcast that I've looked into, worked with, whatever, every podcast with a big audience has started with a core complete fanatical audience of 100, 200, 300. And I don't mean like everyone has to go through that number, obviously. What I mean is like a core, they've gone through a year or 2 years with, a few hundred people that they have invested in. Even though they've only got a few hundred listeners, they've just created great content. They've talked to those listeners. They maybe have done in-person events. But they've done certainly things to connect with that audience more than just that one way. And that's what creates this core of people that help you get it out there. Like podcasting is a word of mouth medium in many ways. It's definitely one of the great ways to grow it. So yeah, creating that core. What's it? It's Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True
Kevin
Fans,
Kelly,
isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, huge fan of that ethos
Yep.
of, and pointing out to people it doesn't have to be 1,000, but
Yeah.
the idea that a small clutch of highly rabid fans, as opposed to just audience members or visitors or even listeners, subscribers. If you can go from listener to subscriber to fan, then with that fandom comes advocacy. With that fandom comes buying into literally everything that you do. And Kevin Kelly's whole thing of 1,000 fans buying every piece of merch, every record, traveling to every gig. That's more than enough to make a substantial living from.
And fans become fans through perspective, not through information, do they? Going back to that as well, like people will only become those kind of rabid fans of your perspective, your insight, not just the knowledge in your head.
Oh, that's so true as well, because I think, and this is certainly a shift in a challenge that we've had ourselves with our own podcast, because there was a knowledge vacuum in the membership space when we came into it in 2015. And that, of course, presented, I don't want to say an easy opportunity, but an obvious opportunity, because there was no competition for knowledge back then. Nobody was sharing actual expertise. But then by filling that and by helping that market grow, then knowledge becomes more commoditized, and what's missing is perspective. And that's been something I've been trying to shift over the recent years. Even just the little pivot from, five ways to improve your member onboarding to my 5 favorite member onboarding experiences. The number one mistakes people make with retention to this retention mistake boils my blood. Like just material and substance, 95% of it is identical, but just injecting even just a little bit of you, that shifts it. And it's funny you're saying that the rabid fans come from perspective, because I'm thinking of conversations I've had even just within the last year of people now getting back out to events, and we ran Retain Live, so we had people who I've not seen in 6 years turning up, and anytime anyone was kind of praising the podcast or praising what we did, it was never, yours give me so many like important bits of information. It's almost like that's a given. That's, well, of course you're going to, that's expected. You're an expert on this topic. It's not above and beyond to share expertise, but it's always, I really like the way you think on this. I really like your approach on this. And that, I think, you're right. It's going to become even more critical in everything I think we do. Now that AI can like fill any information void in seconds.
Yeah. I mean, the hope, AI will learn how to copy perspective in some ways, but it just, I suspect it'll find it very hard to do it really authentically, because you just have to have the background, the story, the like perspective is hard. It's hard earned, isn't it? It's earned through lots of time. It's earned through lots of experience, and it's the bit that I'm hoping is much harder to copy.
Is there anything, as far as podcasting goes, anything that's happening with AI that is freaking you out, scaring you, worrying you? I know we've got purely AI generated shows popping up. Do you think they're ever actually going to rise above what they are?
The most recent one, or the kind of biggest controversy in the last 6 months or so, was that I can't even remember their name. I didn't look into that. It came out that there was this company publishing, it was about 3,000 episodes a week on these tiny little niche. Did you come across this?
Yes.
So on niche topics, they had like 3,000 different shows, just picked out like all of the kind of supposedly most profitable topics to talk about, created an entirely AI scripted, AI recorded, AI voiced episodes. And they were getting 5, 10, 15 listens a week, and therefore generating a few pennies of advertising. But it just blew over so quickly. And I just don't think that's got any legs, because at the end of the day, the advertisers won't be getting any value out of them at all. because it's crap content. It's
Yeah.
not very engaged listeners, and therefore the advertising conversion will be absolute rubbish. So I just don't think it's going to work that way. Yeah, but that was the big one recently.
Yeah, I remember seeing that and thinking, okay, maybe this won't be it, but is this going to spark an idea for someone who actually does it right? But yeah. I think if the bar shifting in terms of what people are expecting to get, and they don't necessarily just want, Alexa reading out Wikipedia, which is I think what most of these shows are. Hopefully we're not going to see too much of that.
I believe that podcasting might be the most insulated medium from this in many ways, because it is so authentic. Like the power of a podcast is that you speak for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and it is so, like you're talking about those solo episodes that you do. I've done the same, even if it is a conversation between two friends for an hour. Like that is the humanity of that length of time is so much harder to fake than a 10-minute info video, something like that.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be so much more that. But it's also why I kind of believe in in person much more in future as well, because I think the more that kind of stuff comes out, the more people will crave, like, is this a human or not? Like it'll become like, the food labels on your, it's the red thing for saturated fats. I'm not going to have that one. It'll be like, they'll be looking for these indications that it's human content. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. People are already, finding all the little signals of AI generated written content. You have AI content checkers,
like the social media and stuff.
You have social media platforms now that are flagging AI generated content, images that have kind of hidden watermarks in them. There's got to be something like that coming for audio as well, whether it is a hidden kind of signature within the audio waveforms, or whether it is literally like podcasting channels require a disclaimer at the top. And I do think it's ultimately consumers don't want slop. The problem is not a lot of them realize what they're being fed is slop, and I think the platforms are going to recognize how detrimental that is. Advertisers are going to recognize how detrimental that is, and they're going to insist on a clear label, like what you're about to listen to is garbage. Proceed with caution.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the thing. It'll just kill the social media networks, I think, because there'll be no humans left posting on them.
Yeah.
So it's in their interest to make sure it's sorted in some way.
Definitely. So shifting gears a bit, and obviously kind of talking about going a bit deeper, focusing on that kind of core, but there is still the importance of discoverability. Otherwise we wouldn't bother putting ourselves on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of these. We just kind of go to the local BNI meetings and win one listener at a time. So what is working right now for discoverability? Is it just showing up consistently and putting out good stuff? I'm not asking for tricks and hacks and should you release 5 episodes at once or 3 at once? But is there anything that the networks are looking for and rewarding within their algorithms that would be helpful for an independent podcaster to know about?
If you're talking outside of YouTube, the YouTube machine is different altogether. It's pure algorithm based. So there's such a different thing. We could talk about that if you want to, but if you're talking about more traditional audio discovery, the ways I look at it, like SEO actually still works. Like it's still the 99% thing in audio discovery. So people will go on Apple Podcasts, they'll go on Spotify, they'll go on Pocket Casts, whatever it is, and they'll type in a topic. Or a question, even. Sometimes they use it as a search engine too. So title optimization, descriptions, your episode titles. This is the thing that actually podcasters mess up a lot, is that they'll have an episode title which is like, it's like Colin Gray or Mike Morrison talks about podcasting, and that's it. It's not based on the actual contents of the episode. It's not how to grow your podcast or how to grow a podcast for a membership.
Or the title is literally just episode 1.
Yes.
episode 2.
Yes, exactly. Still surprisingly common.
Yeah.
And the episode search is really highly kind of prioritized in Apple Podcasts and all the other apps. So you see shows and episodes. So that stuff is still really important. And growing there too is transcripts. So Apple Pods automatically transcribes every single show nowadays. So they're starting to use transcripts for search as well. So actually stating your topics quite clearly up front, like making sure you're doing a good intro where you actually really introduce the topic quite well, make sure the keywords are in there. It's not like keyword stuffing or anything. You just need to actually tell the listener, here's what I'm going to talk about today. And if you do that naturally, the keywords will be there. Just make sure to do it up front. So that stuff still works a treat. And the other three things, I think, there's three other ways that I look at growing a podcast these days. Is kind of there's all sorts of like individual ways for particular shows, but the three quite general ones are you've got the clips. So we could talk about short form clips if you want. It's kind of cross purpose. Collaborations always will work in podcasting. And there's some really interesting ways to do that work much better than even just an interview swap these days. And then you've got newsletters. So back to email, and the way that ties into podcasting as well. And a lot of the email providers actually starting to really lean into this too. So yeah, I think those three, what do you want to dig into?
All of them. Yeah, let's go one at a time. We'll dig in a little into each of them if we're going on that front. We've already kind of talked about clips and repurposing little segments when you're recording a video podcast. And like there's a few that we mentioned, Diary of a CEO. I've never watched a full episode of Diary of a CEO. I've never listened to a full episode. I've watched a lot of clips. And I followed through into their ecosystem because of that. Same with I'm sure it's called Bad Friends. It's like Andrew Santos in America. Again, never watched a full show. I watched a lot of clips and then got into their ecosystem. So short form video and clips from podcasts, absolutely seems obvious if you're creating a video podcast. How can people use them beyond just, okay, every episode I've got to find 3 little snippets? And what do we do if you're just creating an audio-only podcast?
Yeah. I think when it comes down to it, the old advice was, and you still can do this, is that it's possible to do the old audiogram approach. You've seen those clips where it's just an image really and then a waveform jumping around. So, I mean, you can still make them. There's great tools out there that do it, like Headliner, Wave. So it's possible, but they're not half as engaging. They don't perform half as well. So if you want to use clips, generally you want to commit to actually like making sure you've got a decent enough webcam and just get one like nice light that you'll place behind your webcam, and that makes all the difference. That can turn you from like a really crappy looking video into something that's like quite passable and quite decent. So that's the starting point. Even if you're only releasing the audio episode, if you want to do clips, get that done at least. The thing I find works better for growing a pod, like you can grow an audience on YouTube or TikTok or whatever through those clips like you're talking about, like taking automatic clips from an episode, but they've not really been seen to convert that well often to actual long form listeners. The thing I do, and also I find they actually don't save that much time. Have you done that a lot with your show, Mike, in terms of like doing the automatic tools? Like how long does it take you to do it?
No, not done those at all, no.
I find like there's a lot of automatic clipping tools out there and they're supposed to save you time. I find that most of the time I spend longer doing that than if I just try and pick them out.
That's why I don't use them. I've tried them. I think I was using Descript. I tried it with Descript and I love Descript for so many things and I hate it for so many others. I always find, I don't know if it's the accent, I don't know if it's what it is, but the clips that get pulled are never good clips, and so you end up not just spending more time on it than if you'd done manually, but like it's
you end up like trying to do some editing on them. This isn't quite perfect. The first sentence is a bit rubbish. I want to cut this bit out. You end up like properly editing them. It's just a pain in the arse, and they still end up suboptimal because it's a 60-minute conversation. A 60-second clip from it is never going to. I mean, like the big teams, like the celebrities have got 3 hour episodes, and they've got teams of people searching out and editing and cutting together a perfect 60-second clip. And even then, still, they're sometimes not that great. So the thing that I find works best for people of like with a, if you're just doing it yourself for a small team or whatever, is actually you finish recording and then you just quickly sketch down, here's 2 or 3 things I remember from the episode. And then you just speak it afterwards on the camera. You pull out your phone and you say, hey, just finished. No, well, I say, no, sorry. So you actually give them a hook. So you say, like, what's a wee hook here? You think, like, this is only going to be 60 seconds. What's a bit of info that I can talk about? You say something like, I just talked about like 4 different tricks around how to collaborate with other podcasters and make it work for you, really. And then you go into it a little bit, and then you say at the end, for the full thing, go and listen to our full Podcraft episode. And actually, you've got a good hook, you've got a bit of info, and you've got a takeaway, a call to action at the end. And suddenly, that can take me 4 or 5 minutes max. Because when you've just recorded it, it's fresh in your mind. You just like hit record and go. Don't really edit it or anything like that. And I've found that they perform way better than the automatic clips, actually.
That's interesting. That's more aligned with how we do things. I am constantly getting shouted at by Beth, our head of growth, to do exactly how you've described there. Record the episode, and then as soon as it's fresh in your mind, phone out or camera on and just say, just talked about this. Yeah. Go listen to the full episode. I'm terrible at remembering to do that. But what we've done is we've utilized AI a little bit to take the transcript and pull out either one point or a summary of the points made using the language and the substance, and scripting a 60-second short form video, and then using that just as kind of my basis to just shoot off about that as a short form video we do, like it could be weeks later. But yeah, that idea of when you're in the zone where you've just been talking about it, doing it after you've hit stop on the record, just makes sense. Yeah.
And you'll create such a better 60 seconds, like deliberately making it 60 seconds long than trying to manufacture it afterwards as well.
Oh, because that is the limits on the short form. I know some places are expanding those. But even then, it's still, you will find a way of filling the time when you're trying to condense even a 20-minute thing into a 2-minute thing. I'm really curious. This is such a minute detail. When you're giving people the hook and the call to action, I'm just curious how you do it. Are you sending people to your, like, a generic URL for your podcast that will obviously have them hit the first episode? Are you using short links? So the podcasthost.com or podcraft.com/137. What are you using for your audio call to actions these days?
Yeah, good question. It's short links, almost always. I've actually narrowed it down nowadays to a link fire type page. So, the kind like you've got a link in bio type page, lots of tools help you create them now. And you can just list like 4, 5, 6 things. And so I often have that updated to have our latest episode of Podcraft and our latest YouTube video on there at the top. So it's something, like you say, not always great at remembering it, but that's my aspiration, is to have that updated every single week, because I think that's about the ideal, is to always have it the same link. It's always thepodcasthostcom/links. Actually, I made one my name. It was like colingray.link as well. So if you go to either of them, you can go and have a look at our one. So we make it the same thing every time, and actually that just updates to have the stuff that you want to be top of mind right now.
Yeah, I know we've experimented with chatbots as well. So if we're putting the short form video onto Instagram or onto Facebook, we'll just say, comment podcast or comment 454, and that'll trigger a message through ManyChat that pings them the actual link to the episode. So playing around with different ones, but I think we moved away from putting every single podcast episode on the blog. Before that, it used to be membershipgeeks.com/episode number, and each one was a short link. But I suppose you just experiment with these things. I was just curious what you were doing, what was working for you on that front.
No, yeah, for sure. I love the detail. It's we used to do that too. We shifted away from putting every episode on the blog too, actually, just because we ended up doing a lot of duplication of content. Really,
Mm. Yeah,
once
same.
you're like a few hundred episodes in and you've covered everything in blog post anyway, then creating a podcast episode about it, it's just not that handy.
Literally the exact problem that we had as well.
Yeah.
All right, so we got the short form links. The
Yes.
second thing was the three things.
Yes.
We
The
had
three
short form
different.
links,
Oh yes, collaborations.
collaborations.
Yeah. Collaborations. I think they're my favorite. It's partly why we're doing this. Me thinking about this was me reaching out, like who are my friends that I can talk to about stuff, and I was like, oh, Mike, definitely Mike. So we did an interview swap. So you came on my show, did an interview, and I'm now on your show. So that's one method that you can use to grow. And the whole thing is around finding people that have a similar audience, that might have a similar interest, that there's a bit of crossover with. And it's funny because you can do proper full on competition. Like you could go on another membership owner's podcast and they could go on yours, and technically you're competing. But I mean, nobody listens to only one podcast. So actually,
Yeah.
in most cases, there'd be some times when you wouldn't want to go on somebody else, but for the
Yeah.
most part, actually, competition isn't a huge deal in this. And you can always find crossover with parallel industries and all that kind of stuff. So interview swap is great. But I actually like better a few other methods, like co-hosted episodes, I think are one of the best. So we could come up with a topic that suits both of ours. So maybe growing memberships through podcasts like we're talking about right now. We could, in fact, I was thinking as we were talking just 10 minutes ago, I might actually put this on my feed anyway. So this might end up almost a co-hosted episode anyway, because this is totally useful to the Podcraft audience. But co-hosted episodes means that you only have to do one episode, and it's much more a shared ownership thing, which actually it tends to lead to we know each other well enough. We can have a conversation back and forth. So it's not like a one-sided chat here anyway. But actually, if you engineer that up front so that it is a bit of both, it's quite even in terms of your opinion and my opinion. They tend to make for better content.
Yeah.
You can easily enough post them on both feeds too. And a wee trick there as well is quite often it can be quite nice to record maybe 40, 50, 60 minutes, chop it in two and have part one on one feed and part two on the other. So you're not duplicating across. And
it's like you get those with TV shows as well. When you have crossovers on TV shows, you will have the first episode of the arc is on one of the shows, and then the second episode is on the other show. I love that.
Yeah. So co-hosted shows work nicely, and they're a bit less effort because you're obviously only doing one. And then you go like the least effort, but still reasonably effective is things like feed drops. So just saying, like, Mike, give me an episode that you think will be interesting to a podcasting audience, and I'll give you an episode that I think is interesting to a membership audience. And it's literally just an episode we've recorded in the past, and we just repost them on each other's feeds. And you just record a 1-2 minute intro and say, you give a bit of context. Here's why we're posting this, and then post it that way.
I love that idea because it's something that we've done for years. On the Geeks podcast is From the Vault. So twice a year, it's usually around spring and autumn, we'll pull out 3 old episodes that are still evergreen, that are maybe from, now 7 or 8 years ago, and just republish them with an intro and an outro. And that's kind of like, the idea of having that sort of feed drop where it's a similarly valuable older episode of someone else's. You're introducing it so it's got the context.
Yeah.
No, I really like that.
Yeah,
I'm absolutely doing that. That's the next 50 episodes sorted.
Nice.
I like
People
that.
won't hear from you in the next 5 months.
I'll see you all later. I'm retiring for the year. I'm just gonna magpie from every other amazing podcast out there. I love that as a collaboration effort. That's
Nice.
really
Great.
cool.
And even going beyond that as well, you can do promo swaps. So even if it's like a 1 minute trailer, 2 minute trailer, and you just agree to play these little trailers in there, could be you create it for your show and they play your one, or they do a host read type ad, that kind of thing works nicely. But going beyond that, the ones that have actually worked the best for us is when it actually brings together more than just a podcast too. So maybe you test one with a co-hosted show, you see, do you get on, do you kind of resonate, all that kind of stuff. And then actually you tie in a wee campaign where you do 2 or 3 episodes, but tie in your newsletters, your socials as well. And it's actually a kind of, you do something together. You actually do a little project together, or you do a little series together, or something like that, which then ties into the other mediums as well. And therefore it's a bit of a blanket effort. So yeah, I think you can go way beyond just the episode swaps as well.
Oh, I love that. And you mentioned newsletters. That was your third big thing that's working now for discoverability.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it used to be that newsletters, as you know well, Mike, are more for retention. They're more for, nurturing. So once you've got people in your ecosystem, you get them on their newsletter, and then you reach them every week, and it's a way to tell them about episodes, but to give them more value and to do all that kind of stuff. But these days, like, newsletters have a whole discoverability network built into them in many cases, depending on who you use, of course. Who is it you use these days? You're always
still with Active Campaign
guy. Yeah,
I am veering away from them because that's a whole rabbit hole. But
but you were okay. Well, the two that there's 3, isn't there? You've got Substack is like the classic one. It was kind of the first one that really built itself on discoverability. So you set up a Substack, and then their thing is that they help you get found by other people. So it's almost like that referral thing. So if somebody subscribes to a newsletter on finance, they'll say, "Oh, do you know these other 5 newsletters on finance?" And you end up getting a bit of a network effect going on there. And then Kit, so ConvertKit, now Kit, that's what we use these days. They've got a whole creator recommendation network built in there as well. So you can set up deals with, it's collaborations again, but you can set up little exchanges where if somebody signs up for our newsletter, they get recommended 2 or 3 others that I choose. So we choose who to help recommend, and you set up those exchanges. And Beehive as well, they're kind of the newer kid in the block, but Beehive have just accelerated past a lot of the others, I think, in the last 6 months, actually. They've now built in podcast hosting. So Beehive have gone all in on podcasting as a kind of newsletter. So as a newsletter tool. So they are talking about audio-only newsletters, paid audio newsletters, being able to build audio clips into your newsletters really nicely. So they are kind of using almost meshing newsletters and podcasting together really strongly, whereby, but then that also ties into their growth recommendation network, their advertising network, their promotion network, all that stuff too. So I think this is going to be a big next step, I think, in podcasting.
That's definitely interesting in obviously utilizing the newsletters as almost a distribution tool for podcast episodes, because obviously podcasting has its foundations in its distribution method. So it is, that's curious. But even just the fact that you have newsletter companies, email companies that are set to have newsletters who are prioritizing podcasting, I think is just a good statement of the fact there are still people out there like actually innovating for discoverability and interesting.
I think there's something around they're very similar, aren't they? The kind of purpose of a newsletter and a podcast, in terms of it's often opinion. It's often we're talking about perspective and insight. Good newsletters are often just somebody writing about some thoughts, aren't they, and sharing some insight, and you're kind of on the inside because you've subscribed. And podcasting is very similar. It's like insight, perspective, and you're on the inside. You're part of this group that subscribes to this show, and they work so nicely together because they're on a weekly schedule as well often, and it's that kind of routine. And if you don't see the podcast come out, then you get the newsletter, and the newsletter can prompt you to listen to the podcast. And there's this summary thing as well. Like, one of the downsides of podcasting has often been the fact that it's long. So sometimes you don't have time to listen to the episode. Sometimes you want to get a summary of the episode, or you do listen, but you want to actually see the crib notes to go back and review it and see, what do I do with this information? So there's a real great collaboration, partnership between the written word and the audio there. And then when you also tie in the growth part as well, it's great.
Yeah. And I think it does reflect kind of what you're saying about going deeper with people, because it's kind of going from essentially podcasting being a vehicle for sharing information, advice, or what have you, to it actually almost just being the way in which you facilitate a deeper connection to someone in your audience, a fan. And And so it's almost podcasting is now, I'm saying now as though it's probably always been this, but it's more focused on podcasting is a means to the end, which is that fandom. And so you have multiple means to facilitate that end. So whether it's through podcasting, whether it's through the newsletter that ties in with that, whether it's through in person, it's not about I am creating a podcast and someone listens to it. It is I am creating connections and deeper relationships with my audience. And I use podcasting, which ties in with the email, which ties in with the events in order to facilitate that. So it's just that shift in perspective, I think. That's probably more needed. The more this human element needs to come into what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that. I hadn't thought about it that way, but it is, isn't it? It's like it's people who do a podcast, people who run a newsletter, often it's just about getting a message out there, isn't it? It's about getting your voice out there, whether it's in writing or in podcasting. Whereas other mediums are sometimes more informational or entertainment or whatever. Podcasting, particularly newsletters, often it's the message. It's like, I need to get this message out there.
So obviously with talking about the increase in the human element and that connection, that relationship, that might to some people feel a little counter to the idea of then having to promote and sell their product. Because, if you're just sharing information, you share, here's 5 tips. And if you want to know everything else, you want to know the next 5, or you want the guide on how to execute on this, then go and join the membership. But I think sometimes when it becomes a little bit more of a human conversation, the pressure or the having the purpose of this podcast exists ultimately to promote my membership, my product, might feel a little more jarring. Like there's a bit more whiplash of, I'm going to be this real raw, vulnerable person, and then bam, come join my membership. How can people utilize their show to promote and sell their membership products, or just to sell in general?
Yeah, I think the classic way that has always worked best in podcasting is actually building part of your content around the thing that you're trying to sell. As in, we do a lot on Podcraft, for example. Podcraft's our show about how to run a podcast. We do a lot on there around bringing our members' questions, their thoughts, their activities into the show. Like we build a lot of our content around the stuff that happens in the membership. So you say, so we're going to do a segment now. We got in a great question from one of our members in Podcraft. We were having this conversation in our member Q&A space where we were helping them figure out the best way to grow their podcast with social media. And this was one of the questions that came up that we talked this all through, and we're going to share it here on Podcraft. Yeah. And suddenly you're offering great value on the podcast, but you're going, oh, by the way, did you hear the fact that there's this great info and this person just asked a question and we actually worked with them to make this thing happen? So I think that's a huge part of that.
Bring that into the conversation, bringing the sourcing guests from your member base where you're going to end up talking about the membership just as part of the story, not as part of a plug. And I suppose it's just that consistent theme of actually being human about it. Being authentic.
You mentioned the stuff that comes from it, like case studies, like you say, they're always brilliant, isn't it? And when you teach something, you mention the fact that, we've got a whole section on this in our Launch Mastery course. Like we've got a whole section on how to cut your editing time. But here's kind of 4 or 5 of the big takeaways from it here, and then you get into that as well. And I think with podcasting, the brilliant thing is that you can give away that value, but you can do it in such a human way that you mention where you're getting it from and where they can get more of it. And I mean, we've talked about this a few times as well. Like the information isn't necessarily the big part of it now. It's the perspective, but also the execution as well. Yeah. And that's really what we're leaning into with our membership. So saying things like, here's how to grow your show. Oh, we worked with a member a couple of weeks ago around, we used our accountability to really set them 3 tasks every week from our growth course and we worked with them, gave them help on the questions they had, any little barriers they come up with. And here's what happened, give them results, that kind of stuff, where you can show that not only is it the info, it's the actually getting the stuff done. That's the hard part, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, so of course, if anyone has been thinking of getting into podcasting or has a podcast and it's maybe not quite taken off the way that they'd wanted to, then hopefully what we talked about today, if they've been kind of putting it off and thinking, well, is there space? Is it too late? Is it just dominated by big players? What's the point because of AI? Hopefully this just gives people that new perspective, which I think is perhaps the key word of the episode. And of course, if someone is looking to start a podcast, you have so many incredible resources over at thepodcasthost.com and Alitu, which is just a phenomenally powerful tool. And you very, very kindly have put together a course for the Academy members as well.
Great to hear that. See that shared, actually. Yeah. So, what are you calling it, Nicole? We call it Launch Mastery. Have you given it a Membership Geeks name?
I've not branded it as anything fancy. It's Launch a Successful Podcast. Because
nice. Perfect.
That's what it helps people to do.
I hope that helps some of your memberships. Yeah, that's great. Your members.
I mean, it's that thing. I've been doing this for 10 years, and then in putting that course up into the Academy, like last week it went up, and I'm just going to check out this video and then find myself watching the whole lesson. Like, I'm just taking notes here. And this is like 10 years into my journey. So, that's something I know a lot of people in the Academy are podcasters, because a lot of people see how well it works for us. And others are drawn to the idea of it. So, having that laid out in that course is undoubtedly going to help a whole load of people. But if people want to dive a little deeper into how to really execute well in the world of podcasting, how to build on the success, or maybe how to revive a flagging podcast, how to survive the changes in the industry, then where should they go to get more from you?
Well, you can always go over to the one we mentioned, colingray.link. So my name, colingray.link. And that has a link to, so you can choose your form, actually. So we've got our podcast, obviously. If you like listening to podcasts, that's one way to do it. We've got our YouTube channel that has a ton of videos on there about how to make a successful podcast. I've got a whole video on how to do those collabs, actually. 13 different ways to collaborate with other podcasts. That's one of our more popular videos. And we've got a couple of free courses in there too, actually, just 7-day email courses, one for launching and one for growing. So you can do a 7-day kind of boot camp around either the launch stage or the growth stage. That's probably good places to start.
Love that. So if you are podcasting already, or if you're looking to start a podcast, you know where you've got to go. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Colin. Genuinely, I could be sat for hours just kind of semi-selfishly picking your brains on what we should be doing as podcasters. But this has been so useful. I've all scribbled down ideas of stuff I'm going to do, and I'm sure that our listeners have done the same. I really appreciate you sharing so much insight and advice on what's working now.
Yeah, thanks to you, Mike. Always great to come on. Thank you.
All right, that is it. I hope you found this useful. I hope you got as much from that discussion with Colin as I did. And I've certainly already started to make tweaks to my own strategy for this podcast on the back of Colin's advice. Now, whether you already have a podcast and you want to kind of rebuild the foundations, or if you're considering launching a brand new podcast, Colin very generously worked with us to create a brand new comprehensive course on how to launch a successful podcast that is available to all members inside Membership Academy. So if you're part of Membership Academy, get yourself over there, get into the training library, and check out that course from Colin on launching a successful podcast. And if you aren't a member, then this is just another reason amongst many why you should become part of Membership Academy. It is the community for membership owners with cutting-edge training, templates, tutorials, and all the community support and access to me for that private coaching to help you not only launch, but to grow your membership the right way, a way that is sustainable, a way that will keep your membership growing and thriving for years to come. So head over to membershipacademy.com, get yourself signed up, and check out the course from Colin. Big thanks, lots of appreciation to Colin for joining me on the show, sharing his insights and his experience. It's been a very valuable conversation, even just selfishly for me as a podcaster, so I hope that you've taken a lot from it as well. That is it from today's episode. You'll find all the links we talked about in the show notes, so make sure you check those out, and I will see you next time for another episode of the Membership Geeks podcast. Bye for now. If you enjoyed this week's episode of the Membership Geeks podcast, we invite you to check out membershipacademy.com. Membership Academy is the original membership about memberships, and it's the essential resource for anyone at any stage of starting, growing, and running a successful online membership business. Whether you're still trying to figure out what your idea is going to be and you need some help making it a reality, or whether your website is already up and running and you're looking for ways to grow and attract new members, then Membership Academy can help you to get to the next level. Not only do you get access to our step-by-step membership roadmap, our extensive training library, and exclusive member-only discount and tools, you'll also become part of our supportive, active community of membership owners that will help you along the way in your journey with feedback, encouragement, and advice. All of this and more make Membership Academy the #1 place to be for anyone looking to start, manage, and grow a successful membership business. Check it out and join the community at membershipacademy.com.